Go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our town hall meeting. I appreciate everyone being here today. My name is Miso Wisely, and I am the Health Policy Administrator. Tonight we'll be talking about sex education in our public school system. If you have any comments, I see that we have familiar faces. Hello, Sue Helen. Hello, Mr. Jones. And if you have any respectful comments, please come up to the podium, and we would enjoy to hear what you have to say. Okay? Sex education. It shouldn't be a choice, it should be understood. Sex education is a process of acquiring information and forming ideas about beliefs, sexual intimacy, relationships, and skills. It is also about developing young people's skills so they make informed choices about the behavior, how they feel confident and competent about acting on their own choices. It is widely accepted that young people have the right to sex education. This is because it's the means by which are helping young individuals about understanding abuse, exploitation, unintended pregnancies, sexually transmitted disease, HIV, and AIDS. It is also argued that providing sex education helps meet young people's rights to information about matters that affect them, their family, and their friends. This will also help them enjoy their sexuality and relationships that they form. The aims for sex education is to reduce the risk of potentially negative outcomes from sexual behavior, such as unwanted or unplanned pregnancies and infection within the sexually transmitted disease family, HIV is an example. Aims to contribute to young people's positive experiences for their sexuality, and by enhancing their quality of their relationships and their ability to be informed in the decisions on their own behaviors. Sex education that works aims to help young people to be safe and enjoy their own sexuality. Skills that they will learn and develop. If sex education is going to be effective, it needs to be included with opportunities for young people to grow and develop their own skills. The skills that young people develop as part of sex education are linked to more general life skills. Being able to communicate, then listen, negotiate with others, and for their identity sources, help them advise others, be comfortable in their own skin, and use useful life skills for their future in their sexual relationships. Effective sex education develops young people's skills in negotiation, decision-making, assertion, and listening. Other important skills include being able to recognize the pressures that they will form when they grow old. For most challenges, they face prejudice, and being able to seek help from adults is very important. Being comfortable to ask your parents, your peers, and professionals. For example, through family, community, health, and welfare services. Sex education that works also helps equip young people with the skills to be able to be different, to between accurate and inaccurate information, and to discuss a range of moral and social issues. This will also help differentiate cultural identities and sensitive issues like sexuality, abortion, and contraception. An understanding will be gained from this. When should sex education begin? Sex education that works starts early, before young people reach puberty and before they have developed and established patterns of their own behaviors. They should not be resolved thus. The precise age of which information should be provided depends on physical, emotional, and intellectual development of young people and their level of understanding. What is covered by starting early? It covers and depends pretty much on how you provide sex education. We would make sure that these sex educators are well trained and knowledgeable of information that is not biased. It is also going to be in the context as well as the individual young person wants to know. If they want to know something, they should have the right to. Giving young people basic information from an early age provides the foundation on which more complex knowledge is built up over time. For example, when they are very young, and children want to be informed of how people grow and change over time, how babies become children, then adults. And this provides the basis on which they understand more detailed information. Information about viruses and germs and how they attack the body. Think outside the box. Sexual education is not just about intimacy and physical intercourse with your partner or relationships. It should be a casual talk and be understood that it's more about sexual contact. To refer to President Obama's right thing to do, he agrees that sexual education should start at kindergarten age. According to ABC News, on July 18, 2007, he quotes President Obama, "But this is the right thing to do." Obama continued to provide age-appropriate sex education and science-based sex education in schools. He wants to speak to young women who ask a question about sex education. Obama said, "You as a peer can have an enormous power and impact over your age group, but you have got to have some support from your schools." He says, "Keep in mind," end quote, "I honor and respect young people who choose to delay sexual activity, but I have 2 daughters, and I want them to understand that sex is not something casual. This is something that we definitely want to communicate, and we should be a part of our curriculum. But we also know that when the statistics tell us that nearly half of 15 to 19 years old are engaging in sexual activity, that for us to leave them in ignorance is potentially co-signing them to illness, pregnancy, poverty, and in some cases, death," end of quote. It is asked, what kind of sexual education should be taught to kindergartens? Sex education, Obama says, should be age appropriate. Age appropriate should be what is appropriate touching. And for example, if a student asks the teachers, "Where do babies come from?" do you feel that it is right for a teacher to say, "They all come from storks," when in reality, they should be taught the truth? Obama has an ambition of teaching kindergartners about inappropriate touching and understanding the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any comments, please feel free to come up with respect. I see Mr. Jones has something to say.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Wisely, and everyone else who turned out this evening for this very important matter. With all due respect, Mr. Wisely, on behalf of myself and a couple other teachers, we just have a little statement that we want to say on this matter. My name is Mr. Jones, everybody. I've been a teacher in the Massachusetts public school system for about 10 years now. And I've seen the effects of sex education and the effects of premature sexual activity within the middle school that I teach in, and how it's been, just very influential in the lives of many students within my classroom and with outside of my classroom. The American media, be it television, music, or magazines, have made billions of dollars selling sex. Everyone in our society is directly affected by the media in one way or another. As a middle school teacher in the Massachusetts public school system for about 10 years, I can honestly say that our children are the ones who are mostly influenced by the media and the selling of sex within the media. Our children try to emulate their favorite celebrities, but their idols are showing them that being sexually revealing and promiscuous is the norm. I know that opponents will say that, well, since sex is all around them, it's only right that the children are educated about it and they only know it. And that, for me, is where the problem lies. By teaching safe sex education within our schools, we are also agreeing that being promiscuous is the norm for many students. We are telling our children that it's okay to have sex as long as you do it the correct way, or as long as you do it safely. Sex education within our schools will and have led many children to experiment. Like any good students, if you tell a student, this is how you do something, like any good student, you will want to go home and practice it. If we are making sex education part of our curriculums, we're basically assigning sexual activity to our students as homework. If we want to educate our children about the issues of sex, why not then teach our children about abstinence? Why is it a priority to teach our children the proper way to have sex and not teach them about abstinence? Our school systems have seen the pregnancy rates increase, and it's obvious that safe sex education is not getting the job done. As Mr. Wisely pointed out, the reason for safe sex education is to inform the children, and is to basically cut down the rates of pregnancies, and is to cut down the rates of STDs and AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases. Research that was done by the Guttmacher Institute, a public research education firm who focuses on global sexual health and reproduction issues, announced that the national teen pregnancy rates has increased by 3%, more than a decade of has increased by 3% after more than a decade of decline. The teen pregnancy birth rate has also risen 4%, and the rates of teen getting abortion has also increased 1%. In Massachusetts alone, research shows that most towns saw pregnancy rates increase among teens as much as 8%. As we all know in the educational system, personally for me as a teacher, I've seen many of my students, a lot of young women and a lot of young men who have become parents at a really young age, and it's affected how well they're doing in our classrooms. For many teachers, we're seeing the rate of students who are present in classrooms dramatically decrease, and we have young teen mothers who are taking maternity leave off in middle school and as early as 9th and 10th grade in high school, and we feel like this is really ridiculous. If the reason for teaching sex education is to teach our children how to be safe, and the numbers and research are showing that our children are just, increasing in sexual activity, then we as a school system have failed our children, and we as a school system obviously doing something wrong, and it's time to look a different direction. A study that was headed by John B. Jermont III of the University of Pennsylvania found that abstinence-only education helped to delay sexual activity. Quoted by Mr. Jermont, he said, "This is a rigorous study that means we now can say that it's possible for abstinence-only intervention to be effective." The study compared two groups of students. One group that was taught abstinence-only education, and another group that was taught general safe sex education. And about 1/3 of the abstinence-only students started having sex within the next 24 months, compared to about 42% of those in the sex education classes who started having sex within 24 months. This is a proof that abstinence-only education has the potential to be more effective on our children in safe sex education. And I know for me personally, being a Christian, I know that there's a belief that I want to implement upon my children to tell them that being abstinent is okay, and it's not the norm to be sexually active, and it's not the norm to be promiscuous. And I feel like it is our right as parents and as teachers also to feel comfortable with teaching our children about being abstinent. And we feel like with safe sex education, it really doesn't give the kids a barrier. It really doesn't give the kids an entranceway into knowing that there's nothing wrong with practicing abstinence, and there's nothing wrong with waiting. And our society has become so consumed with teaching our children about being safe, about the proper way to put on a condom, or or different issues about just pregnancy and STDs, that we're forgetting to tell our children that back in the day, us as your parents, we weren't having sex until a lot of us were married, and these are values and these are morals that we grew up with that we aren't implementing upon our children. We're basically letting the media, we're basically letting other sources outside of our homes teach us and teach our children about being sexually active. And as teachers, we can all agree that there's nothing wrong with teaching safe sex education, but we feel that abstinence education should also be implemented within our school systems. And as Mr. Wisely pointed out, the reason for safe sex education, like he reiterated, is to protect the children. And we've seen, as I said earlier, that our children aren't really being protected in the ways that safe sex education has said it was going to protect our children. And he talked about President Obama wanting to start safe sex education for students in kindergarten. And for me as a teacher, I see it as just being absolutely ridiculous, because we're seeing the pregnancy rates between children start at a younger age, and we have middle school and even sometimes kids in elementary school who are becoming pregnant. And even the rate of abortion is going up, because a lot of these children are babies themselves, and they can't even take care of babies, or their bodies aren't fully developed yet to be able to handle carrying a child. And these children are having abortions at a young age, and is destroying their potential to even have children in the future, and is destroying and is adding more health risk to their lives further on. But just being a teacher in the public school system, I can say I care a lot about the students that I work with, and we feel like, I personally feel like abstinence education would be something that's very effective within a school, as research has showed that abstinence education does work, and that abstinence education, is an alternative to safe-sex education and should be implemented within our school system. Thank you very much, Mr. Wiseman.
Thank you very much, Mike Jones. I also want to just be clear that we don't want to live in back in the days. We are living in today. So these unplanned pregnancies, abortions, are because students and young individuals do not know. They need to be educated and informed, and that this is a right and a choice. A decision on this matter will be made upon the next few months, and I appreciate your respectfulness and understanding. Thank you and have a good evening.